The scent of bleach and stale coffee clung to my uniform as I pushed through the heavy glass doors of Lombardi's, the kind of upscale Italian restaurant where I didn't belong, not as a guest anyway. My fingers ached from scrubbing pots for the past 6 hours, and my feet screamed inside the cheap flats that were falling apart at the seams. But I needed this job, desperately. The kitchen staff barely looked up as I clocked in for the evening shift. I was invisible here, just another pair of hands to wash dishes and mop floors. That's what I'd become in the 2 years since everything fell apart, a shadow moving through other people's lives, trying not to be seen. I tied my apron tighter around my waist, the fabric worn thin from too many washes, and started loading the industrial dishwasher. Steam rose in thick clouds, dampening the hair that escaped my ponytail. The noise was deafening, plates clattering, chefs shouting orders in Italian and English, the constant rush of water. I welcomed it. The chaos kept my mind from wandering to places I couldn't afford to go. Table 12 needs bussing, Marco, one of the servers, called out as he breezed past with a tray of empty wine glasses. And be quick about it. We've got VIPs tonight. VIPs. Lombardi's was always full of them. Politicians, celebrities, people who spent more on a single meal than I made in a month. I grabbed a bus tub and pushed through the swinging door into the dining room. The contrast always took my breath away. Out here, everything gleamed. Crystal chandeliers casting warm light over white tablecloths. The soft murmur of conversation, the delicate clink of silverware against fine china. Classical music drifted from hidden speakers. It smelled like expensive wine, truffle oil, and money. I kept my eyes down as I moved toward table 12, collecting abandoned plates with practiced efficiency. Don't make eye contact. Don't draw attention. Just do your job and get back to the kitchen. But then I felt it. A weight. A presence. The kind of attention that makes your skin prickle and your breath catch. I glanced up without thinking, and my hands froze mid-reach for a bread plate. He sat in the corner booth, the best table in the house, the one reserved for people who didn't need reservations. The dim lighting there created shadows, but I could make out his silhouette. Dark suit, perfectly tailored. The kind that costs more than my yearly rent. His fingers rested on the stem of a wine glass, long and elegant, a heavy ring catching the light, a watch that probably cost 6 figures glinted at his wrist. But it was his face that made my stomach drop. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, dark hair swept back in a way that looked effortless, but probably wasn't. And eyes. God, those eyes that seemed to cut through the distance between us like a blade. Even from across the room, I could feel their intensity. Dark, calculating, dangerous. He wasn't looking at his companions, 2 men in equally expensive suits who seemed to hang on his every word. He was looking at me. My pulse hammered in my throat. I jerked my gaze away, nearly dropping the plates in my bus tub. What was wrong with me? I'd seen attractive men before. This was different. He radiated something that made every instinct scream danger, and yet I couldn't shake the strange pull I felt. "Move it, sweetheart," Marco hissed as he passed, jarring me back to reality. I hurried toward the kitchen, my legs unsteady. Behind me, I swore I could still feel those eyes burning into my back. The rest of the shift blurred together. I kept my head down, scrubbed dishes until my hands were raw, and tried to forget about the man in the corner booth. But every time I ventured into the dining room, my traitorous eyes would search for him. Sometimes he was deep in conversation, his expression unreadable. Other times he'd be listening to one of his companions, fingers drumming slowly on the table, a gesture that somehow seemed threatening, and once, just once, our eyes met again. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just held my gaze with an intensity that made my knees weak and my heart race with something that felt dangerously close to fear. Or maybe it wasn't fear at all. It was nearly midnight when disaster struck. I was carrying a full bus tub through the dining room, too full, I realized too late, when my worn-out flat caught on the edge of a rug. Time seemed to slow. The tub tilted. Plates, glasses, and silverware cascaded toward the floor in a horrible symphony of breaking china and shattering crystal. I lunged forward, trying desperately to catch something, anything. My hands closed around a wine glass just as my shoulder slammed into something solid and warm, not something. Someone. The wineglass slipped from my grip and exploded against the marble floor. Red wine splashed across expensive leather shoes. His shoes. And the cuffs of perfectly pressed black trousers. No. 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 The entire restaurant fell silent. Every conversation died. Every head turned. I stumbled backward, my hands shaking as I stared at the destruction at his feet. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. The man from the corner booth stood inches away, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and woody, expensive and utterly intoxicating, close enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry. I'll clean this up. I'll pay for the dry cleaning. Look at me." His voice was low, smooth, with an edge that made it a command rather than a request. An accent lingered beneath the English. Italian, I thought, though softened by years elsewhere. I forced my eyes up, past the wine-stained shoes, past the muscular frame that the suit couldn't quite hide, past the strong column of his throat until I met his gaze, up close. He was devastating. Not handsome in a conventional way. His features were too sharp, too severe. There was a scar, thin and pale, cutting through his left eyebrow. His nose looked like it had been broken at least once, but somehow these imperfections only made him more arresting, more dangerous. "What's your name?" he asked. My mouth went dry. Behind him his two companions had stood, their hands moving to their jackets in a way that made my blood run cold. One of them spoke rapidly into a phone. The other watched me with cold, assessing eyes. "I asked you a question, Bellessa." The endearment sounded like a threat. "Lily," I managed. "Lily Morrison." Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, or calculation. His eyes traveled over me slowly, taking in my stained uniform, my worn shoes, the purple shadows under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide anymore. "You're afraid of me," he observed, his tone almost curious. I was. Terrified. But there was something else too, something I didn't want to name. "I'm sorry about your shoes," I said again, my voice stronger this time. "And your pants. I'll pay." He held up one hand, silencing me. The gesture was small, economical, but carried absolute authority. "Do you know who I am?" I shook my head. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Good." He reached into his jacket. I flinched involuntarily and pulled out a business card, heavy cardstock, black with silver lettering. He held it out to me. I stared at it, not taking it. Every instinct screamed at me to run. "Take it," he said softly. "You owe me new shoes, remember? We'll call it, even if you have dinner with me." "I can't," I blurted out. I'm nobody. I don't want to what?" His eyes darkened, the intensity ramping up another notch. "I think I know what I want, Lily Morrison." The way he said my name made something low in my stomach tighten. This was insane. I didn't know this man, didn't know why he was looking at me like I was the only person in the room, like he could see straight through all my carefully constructed walls to the broken parts underneath. Mr. Lombardi himself appeared then, wringing his hands, his face pale. "Mr. DeLuca, I am so sorry for this disruption. The girl will be fired immediately. Please, allow me to—" "No." The single word cut through the air like a knife. Mr. DeLuca, so that was his name, didn't even look at Lombardi. His eyes stayed locked on mine. "She stays." And she takes the card. It wasn't a suggestion. With trembling fingers, I took the card. The paper felt expensive, weighty. I glanced down long enough to see a name, Dante DeLuca, and a phone number. Nothing else. "Tomorrow," he said, 8 o'clock. "I'll send a car." "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why?" For the first time, something almost human flickered across his face. Not kindness exactly, but something less cold. His hand reached out, slowly, giving me time to pull away, and his fingers brushed my cheek. The touch was feather light, but it sent electricity racing down my spine. "You're shaking," he observed. His thumb traced the curve of my jaw, and crying. I hadn't even realized. Hot tears leaked from the corners of my eyes, the stress and fear and exhaustion of the past 2 years finally cracking through my defenses. I can't, I said again, even as I leaned into his touch like a flower toward the sun. You don't know me. You don't know what— Tomorrow, he repeated, his voice brooking no argument. He withdrew his hand, and I immediately missed the warmth. Don't make me come looking for you, Beleza. You wouldn't like how that ends. Then he was gone, moving past me with his 2 companions flanking him like shadows. I watched them leave through the restaurant's front entrance where a black SUV with tinted windows waited. One of the men opened the door for him, scanning the street with sharp, professional eyes, before DeLuca slid into the back seat. The SUV pulled away, and only then did I realize I'd been holding my breath. I looked down at the card in my hand, at the elegant script of his name, Dante DeLuca. It sounded familiar, like something I should know, something hovering just at the edge of my memory. You stupid girl, Mr. Lombardi spat, making me jump. Do you have any idea who that was? Do you have any idea what you've done? I shook my head mutely. His face was red now, veins bulging at his temples. That's Dante DeLuca. He owns half this city, half the businesses, half the politicians, half the— He stopped abruptly, seeming to reconsider his words. You're lucky he found you amusing. Very lucky. Now clean up this mess and get out of my sight. I dropped to my knees, my hands shaking as I picked up shards of broken glass. Each piece felt sharp enough to cut, but I barely noticed. My mind was spinning, trying to process what had just happened. Dante DeLuca. The name echoed in my head as I worked, as I finished my shift in a daze, as I walked home through dark streets to my tiny apartment in a neighborhood where sirens wailed through the night. It wasn't until I was lying in bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, that the memory clicked into place. 2 years ago, before everything fell apart, I'd seen that name in the newspaper. An article about organized crime, about families that controlled the city from the shadows. The DeLucas had been mentioned. An old family, powerful, dangerous, connected to everything from legitimate businesses to less savory enterprises. And I'd just spilled wine all over the shoes of the man who ran it all. The man who'd looked at me like he wanted to devour me, who'd touched my face with surprising gentleness, who'd demanded I have dinner with him tomorrow night. I pulled the covers up to my chin, suddenly cold despite the summer heat. The business card sat on my nightstand, its black surface gleaming in the streetlight filtering through my threadbare curtains. I should throw it away, should forget this ever happened, should run as far and as fast as I could. But even as I thought it, I knew I wouldn't, because for the first time in 2 years, someone had looked at me like I was visible, like I mattered. And even though every rational part of my brain screamed that Dante DeLuca was dangerous, that getting involved with him would be the worst mistake of my life, there was a treacherous part of me that wanted to know what would happen if I didn't run, if I took his hand and let him pull me into whatever dark world he inhabited. Outside, a car alarm wailed. In the apartment above, my neighbors argued in harsh, angry voices. And somewhere in this city, Dante DeLuca was thinking about me. I was sure of it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, the sharp lines of his face, the way his fingers had felt against my skin, warm, possessive, claiming, the dangerous promise in his voice when he'd said I wouldn't like what happened if he had to come looking for me. By the time dawn broke, painting my dingy apartment in shades of gray, I'd made and unmade my decision 100 times. I wouldn't go. I couldn't. Men like Dante DeLuca didn't want girls like me for any good reason. Whatever game he was playing, I wanted no part of it. But then I'd remember the card on my nightstand, and my resolve would crumble. I dragged myself out of bed and stood under the lukewarm spray of my shower, trying to wash away the exhaustion and fear. The water pressure was weak, sputtering like it might give out completely any moment, just another thing in my life that was broken and unfixable. My reflection in the foggy mirror showed a stranger. When had I gotten so thin? The bones in my shoulders jutted out sharply, and dark circles ringed my eyes like bruises. I looked haunted. Maybe I was. I dressed in my only decent outfit, A simple black dress I'd bought at a thrift store, slightly too big now, but still presentable. My hands shook as I tried to apply mascara, the wand trembling so badly I nearly poked myself in the eye. This was ridiculous. I was getting ready for a date I hadn't even decided to go on. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. I had the morning shift at a diner across town, my second job, the one that barely covered groceries. The owner, Mrs. Chen, was kind enough not to ask why my eyes were bloodshot or why I jumped every time the door opened. "You okay, honey?" she asked around noon, her weathered face creased with concern. "Fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She patted my hand with her small, calloused one. "You work too hard. Young girl like you should be out having fun, not killing herself over 2 jobs. If only she knew. If only anyone knew the real reason I worked myself to the bone, why I lived in an apartment that should have been condemned, why I flinched at shadows and jumped at sudden noises." By 7 o'clock, I was back in my apartment, staring at that damned business card. My phone, an old model with a cracked screen, sat silent beside it. I could call, make an excuse, say I was sick, or that I'd changed my mind. But then what? Would he accept my refusal, or would he make good on his threat to come looking for me? The thought sent a shiver down my spine that wasn't entirely unpleasant, and I hated myself for it. At 7:45, a knock on my door nearly stopped my heart. I wasn't on the ground floor. Someone had to be buzzed in, which meant whoever was out there had either convinced my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to let them in, or they'd simply walked past any security this building pretended to have. I approached the door on silent feet, my pulse thundering in my ears. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a black suit, not Dante. This one was older, built like a brick wall, with gray at his temples and a scar running down his left cheek. One of the men from last night. "Miss Morrison," he called through the door, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Mr. DeLuca sent me to escort you to dinner." "The car is waiting downstairs." I pressed my forehead against the door, breathing hard. This was real. This was actually happening. "Miss Morrison, I know you're there. Mr. DeLuca doesn't like to be kept waiting." The unspoken threat hung in the air. I could refuse, lock myself in, pretend none of this was happening. But somehow I knew it wouldn't matter. Dante DeLuca had decided he wanted me there, and men like him didn't take no for an answer. With trembling fingers, I unlocked the door. The man's expression softened slightly when he saw me. Up close, his face was lined with age and experience, his eyes a sharp gray that missed nothing. They swept over me quickly, assessing, cataloging, measuring threat levels like a trained professional. "I'm Marco," he said, extending a hand. "I head Mr. DeLuca's security detail. You have nothing to fear from me or anyone else tonight. You have my word." I didn't take his hand. "What does he want with me?" Marco's lips twitched into something almost like a smile. "That's between you and the boss. But I can tell you this. He doesn't often extend personal invitations. You should consider yourself fortunate. Fortunate. Right. And if I don't want to go?" The almost smile faded. "Then I'll wait here while you call him and explain that yourself. But Miss Morrison?" He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. "Mr. DeLuca has been on edge all day, distracted. He's not a man who gets distracted easily. Whatever this is between you two, I'd suggest you don't toy with him, for your own sake." The warning was clear. I grabbed my purse, a cheap thing with a broken zipper, and followed him down the narrow stairwell. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Graffiti covered the walls, and the air smelled like mildew and something I didn't want to identify. Marco didn't comment on my building, but I saw his jaw tighten as we passed a cluster of men loitering in the lobby. They straightened when they saw him, their casual poses becoming wary. One of them started to say something, then thought better of it when Marco's hand moved to his jacket. Outside, a black Mercedes waited at the curb, its engine purring like a contented cat. Nothing like the rusted cars and broken-down trucks that lined this street. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Marco opened the back door, and the interior light revealed leather seats, gleaming wood paneling, and, my breath caught, Dante DeLuca himself. He looked different than he had at the restaurant. More relaxed, maybe, though calling anything about him relaxed seemed wrong. He'd removed his jacket, and his white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a glimpse of tanned throat. His sleeves were rolled up to his forearms, exposing muscular arms and what looked like the edge of a tattoo on his right wrist. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. "Lily," he said, my name sounding like a prayer or a curse in his mouth. "Get in." I hesitated, one hand on the doorframe. This was my last chance to run, to choose safety over this magnetic pull toward a man who was everything I should avoid. "I won't ask twice," he said softly, but steel underlaid the words. I got in. The door closed behind me with a solid thunk, and suddenly the world outside seemed very far away. The car smelled like leather and his cologne, that intoxicating woody scent that I'd been unable to forget all day. The space felt intimate, charged with electricity that made the air hard to breathe. "You're late," he observed, as Marco slid into the driver's seat and the car pulled smoothly into traffic. "By 5 minutes," I shot back before I could stop myself. "And I didn't agree to come at all." One dark eyebrow rose. "And yet, here you are." I had no response to that. We drove in silence through the city streets, moving from my rundown neighborhood into areas I rarely visited. The buildings grew taller, cleaner. The people on the sidewalks looked prosperous, their clothes expensive, their smiles easy. I was acutely aware of Dante beside me. He didn't touch me, but I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could feel his gaze on me even when I stared resolutely out the window. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "Somewhere private. Somewhere we can talk without interruption." That should have scared me. Instead, it sent a thrill racing through my blood. We pulled up to a high-rise building in the heart of downtown, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky. A doorman in a crisp uniform hurried to open the car door, his eyes widening slightly when he saw Dante. "Mr. DeLuca, welcome back." Dante ignored him, his attention focused entirely on me. He extended his hand. "Come." I looked at that outstretched hand, strong, scarred knuckles, that heavy signet ring, and knew that taking it would change everything, that I was standing on the edge of a precipice, and one more step would send me tumbling into an abyss I might never climb out of. I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm and possessive, and a satisfied sound rumbled in his chest. He pulled me from the car with easy strength, keeping me close to his side as we walked through the marble lobby. His hand settled on the small of my back. Proprietary and possessive in a way that should have offended me, it didn't. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent, except for the soft hum of machinery. Dante didn't release my hand. His thumb traced small circles on my wrist, right over my pulse point, and I knew he could feel how fast my heart was racing. "Nervous?" he asked, his voice low. "Terrified," I admitted. His lips curved into a real smile this time, transforming his severe features into something devastating. "Good. You should be." The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, and I stepped into a world I'd only seen in magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights sprawling below. The decor was masculine and expensive. Dark leather furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than I'd make in a lifetime. A bar that glittered with crystal and expensive liquor, but it was the dining table that caught my attention. Set for two, with candles already lit, and plates of food that smelled incredible. "I didn't know what you liked," Dante said, releasing my hand to shrug out of his shoulder holster. He said it, and the gun it held on a side table, with casual ease that made my mouth go dry. So I had my chef prepare several options. Several options turned out to be an understatement. The table groaned under the weight of Italian dishes: pasta in creamy sauce, chicken marsala, fresh bread, salads, and desserts I couldn't even name. "This is too much," I whispered. "Nothing is too much for you." He said it like a fact, not a compliment. Like he'd already decided my worth and found it immeasurable. He pulled out a chair for me, and I sank into it on shaking legs. He sat across from me, his dark eyes never leaving my face as he poured wine into crystal glasses. "Eat," he commanded gently. "You're too thin. When was the last time you had a proper meal?" I wanted to be offended by his observation, but he was right. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten anything more substantial than ramen or whatever Mrs. Chen let me take home from the diner. The food was incredible. Each bite burst with flavor, and despite my nerves, I found myself eating with an appetite I'd almost forgotten I had. Dante watched me, a satisfied gleam in his eyes, occasionally serving me more food before I could even think to ask. "Tell me about yourself," he said after a while. "There's nothing to tell." I reached for my wine, needing something to do with my hands. "I'm nobody. I work 2 jobs. I live in a terrible apartment, and until last night, the most exciting thing in my life was when Mrs. Chen let me take home leftover soup." "You're lying." My head snapped up. "Excuse me?" He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his focus laser-sharp. "You're lying. Or at least you're not telling me everything. I can see it in your eyes, the fear that has nothing to do with me, the way you flinch when anyone moves too quickly. The fact that you're working yourself to death in jobs you're clearly overqualified for." My throat tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about, Lily." He reached across the table, capturing my hand before I could pull away. His touch was gentle but firm, his thumb stroking over my knuckles. "I know hiding when I see it. I know running. And you, Bellezza, are doing both. The question is, from what?" Tears pricked at my eyes, and I blinked them back furiously. I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. "Why do you care?" I challenged, my voice cracking. "You don't know me. This whole thing is insane. You can't just— Can't what? Want you? Claim you?" His voice dropped to a dangerous purr. "I did both the moment I saw you, and I protect what's mine." "I'm not yours," I protested weakly. His smile was predatory. "Not yet. But you will be." The declaration hung in the air between us, heavy with promise and threat. I should have argued. Should have told him he was crazy, that people didn't work like that I wasn't some possession to be claimed. But the words died in my throat because part of me, a dark, secret part I didn't want to acknowledge, wanted exactly what he was offering. To be seen. To be protected. To matter to someone. "I need to use the restroom," I said abruptly, pulling my hand from his grip. He studied me for a long moment before gesturing toward a hallway. "Second door on the right." I fled, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The bathroom was as obscenely luxurious as the rest of the penthouse, all gleaming fixtures and soft lighting. I braced my hands on the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes too bright. I looked alive in a way I hadn't in years, and it terrified me. A soft knock on the door made me jump. "Lily?" Dante's voice muffled through the wood. "You've been in there for 10 minutes. Open the door." "I'm fine," I called back, but my voice shook. "Open the door." There was no negotiating with that tone. I turned the lock with trembling fingers, and he pushed inside, filling the space with his presence. We stood there in the soft light, too close, the air between us crackling with tension. "Talk to me," he said, his hands coming up to frame my face. The gesture was surprisingly tender for a man who radiated such danger. "Tell me what you're running from." "I can't," I whispered. "If I tell you, you'll—" "I'll what?" His thumbs traced my cheekbones, catching tears I hadn't realized were falling. "Use it against you? Lily, look at me." I did. Those dark eyes held mine with an intensity that stole my breath. "I am not a good man," he said quietly. "I've done things that would make you sick. I've hurt people, destroyed lives, built an empire on blood and fear, but I protect what's mine. And the moment you spilled wine on my shoes, you became mine. So tell me, who made you cry? Who put that fear in your eyes? The dam broke." "His name is Marcus," I heard myself say, the words tumbling out like poison I'd been holding in too long. "Marcus Chen. We were engaged 2 years ago. I thought he loved me. I had a good job then, at an accounting firm. I was happy." Dante's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, just kept stroking my face with infinite patience. He worked in investments, high-level stuff I never really understood. He asked me to help him with some paperwork one day, said his assistant was sick. I signed some documents without really reading them. My voice cracked. I was stupid. So stupid. Turns out he'd been running a Ponzi scheme, and he'd forged my credentials to make it look like I was the accountant who'd approved everything. Bastard, Dante growled. By the time I figured out what he'd done, he'd disappeared. Took millions from his investors and vanished. The FBI came after me instead. They couldn't prove I was involved, but my reputation was destroyed. My firm fired me. No one would hire me. And Marcus... I choked on his name. Marcus left me a note saying thanks for being such an easy mark. Dante's hands had stilled on my face. When I dared to look at him, his expression was terrifying. Cold rage barely contained beneath a civilized veneer. Where is he now? I don't know. No one knows. He's good at hiding. Good at becoming someone else. I laughed bitterly. The FBI says if he ever surfaces, they'll find him, but it's been 2 years, and nothing. Give me 3 days, Dante said, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. I'll find him. I'll bring him to you. And you can decide what happens to him. I stared at him, shock momentarily overriding everything else. You can't just... I can do whatever I want, Bellezza. That's what you don't understand yet. He leaned in, his forehead touching mine. You've been carrying this alone for 2 years, working yourself to death, hiding, living in fear that he might come back. That ends now. Why? The question came out as barely a whisper. Why do you care? His answer was to kiss me, not gentle, not tentative. His mouth claimed mine with a possessiveness that made my knees buckle. One arm wrapped around my waist, hauling me against his hard body, while his other hand tangled in my hair. He kissed me like he was starving, and I was the first meal he'd seen in years. I should have pushed him away, should have maintained some dignity, some distance. Instead, I kissed him back. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer even though there was no space left between us. He tasted like wine and danger, and something I couldn't name but needed desperately. When his tongue swept into my mouth, I made a sound I'd never heard myself make before. Needy. Desperate. He broke away first, both of us breathing hard. His eyes had gone nearly black, pupils blown wide with desire. That's why, he said roughly. Because I've never wanted anything the way I want you. Because I took one look at you and knew you were supposed to be mine. Call it insanity. Call it obsession. I don't care. You're not going back to that life, Lily. Not to those jobs, not to that apartment, not to hiding in fear. You can't just decide that, I protested. But it sounded weak even to my own ears. Watch me. He pulled his phone from his pocket and made a call, keeping me trapped against him with one arm. Marco, send a team to Miss Morrison's apartment. I want everything she owns packed and moved to the spare bedroom here by morning. Everything. Clothes, photographs, documents, all of it. And I want 2 men stationed outside her building tonight. If anyone approaches her door, I want to know about it immediately. Dante, wait. I tried to interrupt, but he covered my mouth with his hand. Not roughly, but firmly enough to silence me. And Marco, run a full background check. I want to know everything about Marcus Chen. Last known locations, associates, bank records, everything. I want him found. He paused, listening. I don't care how many resources it takes. Find him. He ended the call and removed his hand from my mouth. You're insane, I said, my heart racing. You can't just... This is kidnapping. This is me protecting you. He cupped my face again, forcing me to meet his eyes. You can fight me on this. You can hate me for it. But you're not going back to that life. I won't allow it. You don't own me, I said. But the words lacked conviction. Not yet, he agreed. But I will. And deep down, in that part of yourself you're trying so hard to deny, you want me to. He was right, and I hated him for it. Hated how easily he could see through my defenses. Hated how much I wanted to lean into the safety he was offering, even though I knew men like him were more dangerous than anything Marcus had ever done to me. Come, he said, taking my hand and leading me back to the dining room. Finish your dinner. You need your strength. I followed because I didn't know what else to do. We ate in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was charged, expectant, like the moment before a storm breaks. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out, expecting a spam call, and froze when I saw the text message. Unknown number. I saw you get into a car with a man tonight. Making new friends, Lily. I thought you'd learned your lesson about trusting the wrong people. Be careful. You never know who's watching. The blood drained from my face. The phone slipped from my nerveless fingers and clattered onto the table. Dante snatched it up before I could react, his eyes scanning the message. His expression went from dangerous to absolutely lethal. How long has he been contacting you? His voice was deadly calm. He hasn't. I managed through numb lips. Not since he left. This is the first. Oh God, he's here. He's in the city. He's watching me. Dante was already on his phone again. Marco, we have a problem. Someone's been watching Miss Morrison's apartment. I'm sending you a screenshot. Trace this number. Now. He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something almost like concern in his eyes. Has he ever threatened you physically? I shook my head. No. He's a coward. He manipulates. He steals, but he doesn't. I stopped, remembering. There was one time, right before he disappeared. I confronted him about some irregularities I'd found. He grabbed my wrist, squeezed hard enough to bruise, told me I should be more careful about asking questions I didn't want answers to. Dante's hand clenched into a fist on the table. And you thought you were safe working 2 jobs, living in that death trap of a building, walking home alone at night. I didn't have a choice, I shot back. Not everyone has your resources. Some of us have to survive however we can. You have a choice now. He stood, pulling me up with him. You're staying here tonight, and every night until I find this bastard and deal with him permanently. Deal with him? Dante, you can't just... Can't what? Kill him? He said it so matter-of-factly that my breath caught. He destroyed your life, stole from you, framed you, and now he's stalking you. Give me one good reason why he deserves to live. I couldn't. And that scared me almost as much as Marcus's text. I need to think, I said, pulling away from him. This is too much. It's all too much. Then think here, where you're safe. He gestured toward the windows, toward the city sprawling below. Do you see those lights, Lily? I control half of them. Businesses, politicians, police officers. They all answer to me in one way or another. There is nowhere in the city Marcus can hide that I won't find him. But you need to be smart about this. You need to let me protect you. And what do you get out of it? I challenged. Men like you don't do anything without expecting something in return. His smile was predatory. You're right. I want you. In my home, in my bed, in my life. I want to know everything about you. Every fear, every dream, every secret. I want to watch you come alive again. The way you were before Marcus broke you. And in return, I'll give you everything. Safety. Protection. Revenge if you want it. That's not a relationship, I whispered. That's possession. Yes, and you'll learn to crave it. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. He's very protective, your new friend. Very possessive. I wonder if he knows what he's getting into. You always were good at manipulating men, Lily. It's almost impressive. Rage, hot and fierce, flooded through me. He's trying to make me doubt you, trying to make you doubt me. It won't work. Dante took the phone and turned it off completely. Nothing he says will change what I know. What I see when I look at you. And what do you see? I asked, desperately needing to know. He moved closer, backing me against the window. The city lights glittered behind me, making me feel suspended between earth and sky. His hands bracketed my waist, caging me in. I see a survivor, he said quietly. Someone who's been knocked down and got back up. Someone strong enough to rebuild her life from nothing, even when the world turned its back on her. I see beauty that isn't just physical, though you are beautiful, Bellezza, more than you know. I see someone worthy of protection, of devotion, of everything I have to give. Tears streamed down my face, and this time I didn't try to hide them. Stop hiding your tears, he said, his voice going dark and soft. He won't touch you while I'm here. He won't touch you ever again. I promise you that. And somehow, impossibly, I believed him. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the disorienting realization that I wasn't in my apartment. The bed beneath me was enormous, the sheets softer than anything I'd ever felt. And for one blissful moment, I forgot where I was. Then memory crashed back. Marcus's text, Dante's promise, the way he'd held me after I'd finally stopped crying, carrying me to this bedroom like I weighed nothing, staying until I fell asleep in the chair beside the bed. I sat up, finding myself still in my black dress from last night. Someone, Dante probably, had removed my shoes and covered me with a blanket. The room was elegant but impersonal, clearly a guest space, though the view of the city was breathtaking. A soft knock preceded the door opening. A woman in her 50s entered, carrying a tray of coffee and pastries. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her expression warm but professional. "Good morning, Miss Morrison. I'm Elena, Mr. DeLuca's housekeeper. He asked me to bring you breakfast and let you know your things arrived this morning. I've unpacked everything in the closet." She set the tray on the bedside table. "He's in a meeting but said to tell you he'll be back by noon." "Thank you," I managed, my voice rough from sleep and tears. Elena smiled gently. "The bathroom is through that door. Take your time. You're safe here." After she left, I sat staring at the coffee, trying to process the fact that my entire life had been packed up and moved without my consent. I should be furious. Should demand to go back to my apartment, to my independence, to the life I'd scraped together. Instead, I felt relieved. The shower was another exercise in luxury. Multiple jets, perfect water pressure, expensive products that smelled like heaven. I stood under the hot spray for a long time, letting it wash away the grime and fear of the past 2 years. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a robe that probably cost more than my monthly rent, I found the closet Elena had mentioned. She hadn't been exaggerating. Everything I owned was there, looking shabby and worn against the elegant space. My few items of clothing hung beside empty expanses of rack. My cheap shoes were lined up on shelves clearly meant for many more. I dressed in jeans and a sweater, the most comfortable things I owned, and ventured out of the bedroom. The penthouse looked different in daylight. Still impressive, but less intimidating. I found my way to the kitchen, a chef's dream of stainless steel and marble, where Elena was preparing lunch. "Can I help?" I asked, feeling useless. She gave me an appraising look. "Can you chop vegetables?" For the next hour, I lost myself in the simple rhythm of cooking. Elena was easy to talk to, asking no prying questions, just letting me exist in the normalcy of preparing food. She told me about her 3 daughters, her husband who'd passed away 5 years ago, how Dante had given her this job when no one else would hire a woman her age. "He's not what people think," she said quietly as we worked. "He's done terrible things, yes. But he has honor, loyalty. He protects the people who matter to him. And what am I?" I asked. "To him?" Elena's smile was knowing. "You'll have to ask him that yourself. But I've worked for Mr. DeLuca for 15 years, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." The door to the penthouse opened, and my heart jumped. Dante strode in, flanked by Marco and another man I didn't recognize. He'd changed into a fresh suit, charcoal gray that made his dark eyes even more intense. Those eyes found me immediately, scanning me head to toe as if checking for injuries. "Leave us," he said to his men without looking away from me. They filed out silently. Elena gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze, before disappearing as well. And then we were alone. "You slept well?" he asked, moving closer. "Yes. Thank you for—" I gestured vaguely at the bedroom. For not taking advantage of you while you were vulnerable." His lips quirked. "I'm many things, Lily, but I don't need to force women into my bed. When you come to me, it will be because you want to, because you're begging for it." Heat flooded my cheeks. "Confident, aren't you?" "Realistic." He reached out, tucking a damp strand of hair behind my ear. "We found Marcus." My breath caught. "What? How? It's only been 12 hours. I told you, I have resources." He pulled out his phone, showing me a photograph. "He's been living in Atlantic City under the name Michael Chang. Different look, bleached hair, contacts, put on weight. But it's him." I stared at the image. He was right. Despite the changes, I could see Marcus in the shape of the eyes, the set of the jaw. My stomach churned with a mixture of rage and nausea. "What do you want me to do with him?" Dante asked, his voice carefully neutral. "I don't understand." He hurt you, destroyed your life. What do you want as payment for that? His eyes darkened. I can make him disappear. I can make him wish he'd never been born. Or I can bring him to you, let you confront him. Your choice. And the power in that offer was dizzying. For 2 years, I'd been powerless, a victim of Marcus's schemes. Now Dante was offering me control over my tormentor's fate. I want to see him, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. I want him to know I survived, that he didn't break me. Dante's smile was terrifying and beautiful. Then you'll have that. But Lily, his hand cupped my face. Once we do this, there's no going back. You'll be deeper in my world, exposed to things you can't unsee. Are you sure? I thought about my apartment, about working myself to exhaustion, about jumping at shadows and living in constant fear, about Marcus sending that text, thinking he still had power over me. I'm sure. Good. He pulled me against him, his arms wrapping around me with possessive strength. Marco's team will bring him here tonight. Until then, you stay close to me. I have work, I protested weakly. Not anymore. I called both your employers this morning, told them you wouldn't be returning. I pushed back, anger flaring. You can't just... I can, and I did. His tone brooked no argument. You're under my protection now. That means you don't serve food to strangers. You don't wash dishes in a restaurant kitchen. You don't walk through dangerous neighborhoods at 3 a.m. So what am I supposed to do? Just be your kept woman? His eyes flashed. You say that like it's a bad thing, like I wouldn't give you everything you could possibly want, like being mine is some kind of punishment. It's not about the money, I said desperately. It's about having a purpose, being independent. I can't just sit around your penthouse all day like some... Then find a new purpose. He released me, running a hand through his hair in a rare show of frustration. Go back to school. Start a business. Do whatever you want, with whatever resources you need. But you don't work those jobs anymore. I won't allow it. You don't get to allow or disallow anything in my life, I snapped. I'm not your property. Aren't you? He advanced on me, backing me against the kitchen counter. You slept in my home. You're wearing clothes I'll replace with better ones. You ate food I provided. You're breathing easy for the first time in 2 years because I'm handling the man who terrorized you. Tell me, Bellezza. If you're not mine, then whose are you? I had no answer. He was right, and I hated it. I'm scared, I whispered finally, the admission costing me. I'm scared of what you make me feel, of how much I want this. Want you when I barely know you. You're dangerous, Dante. You admitted as much, and I've already been destroyed by one man I trusted. His expression softened marginally. Marcus was a coward who preyed on your goodness. I'm giving you a choice. Stay with me. Let me protect you. Let yourself feel again. Or walk away. But if you walk away, you do it now, before this goes any further. And Marcus? I'll handle him regardless. That's not contingent on your decision about us. His hand came up to trace my jaw. But I think you already know what you're going to choose. He was right again. I'd known since last night, maybe since the moment in the restaurant when his eyes locked on mine, and I'd felt that dangerous pull. One condition, I said, my voice shaking. No more decisions about my life without asking me first. We discuss things. You don't just decree them. A smile played at his lips. I can agree to that. Most of the time. Dante? Fine. All of the time. Unless your safety is involved, and then I reserve the right to do whatever necessary. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. Is that acceptable, Bellezza? I suppose it'll have to be. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. They've secured him. He'll be here in 2 hours. My stomach dropped. I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you can. And I'll be with you the entire time. He pulled me close again, and I let myself lean into his strength. He can't hurt you anymore, Lily. I won't let him. The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Dante made calls, gave orders in rapid Italian to people I couldn't see. Elena brought me tea I couldn't drink. Marco appeared with 2 other men, all of them armed, all of them moving with military precision to prepare the penthouse for whatever was about to happen. I sat on the couch, watching the city below, trying to prepare myself. 2 years of anger and fear churned in my stomach. 2 years of questions I'd never gotten to ask. Dante sat beside me, his hand covering mine. You don't have to say anything to him if you don't want to. Just seeing you thriving despite what he did, that might be punishment enough. But I wanted more than that. I wanted answers. When the elevator opened, my heart nearly stopped. Marco entered first, followed by 2 men hauling a third between them. Marcus, older, different looking, but unmistakably him. They'd tied his hands, and there was a bruise forming on his jaw. His eyes were wild with fear. Those eyes found me, and he went very still. Lily? His voice was hoarse. What? How? Hello, Marcus. I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. How cold I felt, looking at the man who'd destroyed everything. Or should I call you Michael? I can explain. He started, the familiar charm creeping into his voice. If you'll just listen. Shut up, Dante said quietly. But the command in his voice made Marcus's jaw snap closed. You speak when she gives you permission. You breathe when she allows it. Understand? Marcus's eyes darted between us, calculation working behind them. So, you found yourself a new mark. I have to hand it to you, Lily. You've traded up. Though I wonder if he knows what you're really like. Dante moved faster than I could track. One moment he was beside me. The next, his fist connected with Marcus's face with a sickening crunch. Marcus went down hard, blood streaming from his nose. I said, shut up. Dante's voice was terrifyingly calm as he stood over Marcus. The lady didn't give you permission to speak. Try again. Marcus spat blood onto Dante's pristine marble floor, his eyes watering from the pain. When he looked at me again, the charm was gone, replaced by something uglier, resentment, and barely concealed hatred. Go ahead, Dante said, stepping back to my side. His hand found the small of my back, steadying me. Ask him whatever you need to ask. I stood, my legs surprisingly steady, and walked closer to Marcus. He flinched when I approached, and I felt a savage satisfaction at his fear. Why? The question came out stronger than I expected. Why me? Was I just convenient, or was ruining my life part of the plan all along? Marcus's laugh was bitter. You really want to know? You were perfect, Lily. Smart enough to be useful, naive enough to trust me. You had the credentials I needed, the reputation. And you were so desperate to believe someone could love you that you never questioned anything. Each word was designed to wound, but I felt nothing. 2 years of surviving had armored me against his poison. The money, I continued. Where is it? Gone. Spent. Invested in ventures that didn't pan out. He shrugged, the gesture hampered by his bound hands. Easy come, easy go. And the people you stole from? The retirees who lost their savings? The families you destroyed? My voice rose despite my attempts to control it. Did you ever think about them? Why should I? Marcus's eyes were cold now. All pretense dropped. The world is full of suckers waiting to be taken. I just happen to be smarter than most. You're not smart, I said quietly. You're a coward. You prey on people who trust you because you know you could never succeed on your own merit. You're pathetic. Something shifted in Marcus's expression, a flash of genuine rage beneath the fear. You think you're better than me now? Look at yourself, Lily. You've just traded one con man for another. You think he's different? He jerked his head toward Dante. He's worse than I ever was. At least I never pretended to be anything but what I am. The difference, Dante said, his voice like ice, is that I protect what's mine. You destroy it. And Lily is mine now. For how long? Marcus sneered. Until he gets bored? Until you become inconvenient? Men like him don't keep women like you around for... He didn't finish. Dante's hand was around his throat, lifting him off the ground with terrifying ease. Marcus's face turned purple, his bound hands clawing uselessly at Dante's arm. Dante, I said softly. Don't. He held Marcus there for another few seconds, long enough to make his point, before dropping him. Marcus collapsed, gasping and coughing. Thank you for that, I said to Dante, surprising myself. But I'm done with him. I got my answers. What do you want me to do with him? I looked down at Marcus, wheezing on the floor, and felt nothing but contempt. Killing him would make him a martyr in his own mind. Prison would at least give him time to reflect on his choices. Turn him over to the FBI, I said. Let them have him. Let him face every family he destroyed, every person he stole from. Let him spend the next 20 years in a cell, knowing I'm out here living my life while he rots. Dante's smile was proud. As you wish. He gestured to Marco, who moved forward with his men. Take him to the federal building. Anonymous tip. Make sure they find all the evidence they need to put him away forever. As they dragged Marcus toward the elevator, he tried one last time. This isn't over, Lily. You can't just... The elevator doors closed, cutting off his protests, and just like that, it was done. I stood there, trembling now that the adrenaline was fading, and Dante pulled me into his arms. I buried my face in his chest, breathing in his scent, letting his strength anchor me. You were magnificent, he murmured against my hair, fierce and strong and everything I knew you were. I don't feel fierce, I admitted. I feel exhausted. Then rest. You're safe now. He can't touch you ever again. Over the following weeks, my life transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. True to his word, Dante let me make my own choices, within reason. I enrolled in online business courses, discovering a passion for entrepreneurship I'd never had the freedom to explore. Elena became more friend than employee, teaching me to cook and sharing stories about Dante's rare moments of vulnerability. Marco appointed himself my unofficial bodyguard, much to my initial annoyance and eventual appreciation. He taught me self-defense moves in the penthouse gym, his gruff exterior hiding a surprisingly gentle nature, and Dante was everywhere and everything. Overwhelming in his attention, demanding in his affection, possessive in ways that should have scared me, but instead made me feel cherished. He came home each night, sometimes early, sometimes after midnight, but he always came home to me. We fell into a rhythm, mornings together over coffee, him reviewing business while I studied. Evenings spent cooking with Elena, or dining out at restaurants where we were always given the best table, the most attentive service. Nights where he'd pull me into his arms and we'd talk for hours, sharing pieces of ourselves we'd never shown anyone else. He told me about growing up in his father's shadow, about the violence and ruthlessness required to maintain power in his world, about the first time he'd killed someone, a man who'd betrayed his family, and how it had changed him forever. I told him about my childhood, about parents who'd died in a car accident when I was 19, about building a life from nothing only to have Marcus tear it down, about the shame and fear that had kept me isolated for so long. You're not alone anymore, he said one night as we lay in his bed. Our bed now, as I'd moved from the guest room weeks ago. You'll never be alone again. 3 months after that first night, I woke to find Dante already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. What? I asked sleepily. Marry me. I sat up, suddenly very awake. What? He produced a box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring that made my eyes widen. The center stone was a deep ruby, surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum. It was stunning and unusual and absolutely perfect. I'm not asking, he clarified, his lips quirking. I'm telling you, you're going to be my wife, but I thought you'd appreciate the gesture. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard, I said, but I was smiling. Then let me rephrase. He took the ring from the box and reached for my hand. Lily Morrison, you walked into my life covered in wine and fear, and you brought light into darkness I didn't know could be illuminated. You're strong and fierce and stubborn as hell. You challenge me, ground me, make me want to be better than I am. I love you with a possessiveness that probably isn't healthy and an intensity that definitely isn't normal. Marry me, choose me. Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, providing for you, and proving every single day that you are the most important thing in my world. Tears streamed down my face. That's better. Is that a yes? It's a yes on one condition. His eyebrow rose. You're negotiating with me. You said we discuss things, I reminded him. I want a prenup. He looked genuinely surprised. Why? Because I won't have anyone, including you, someday in some terrible future scenario, thinking I married you for your money. I wanted in writing that I claim nothing from you except your heart. Everything else is yours." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he laughed. A real, genuine laugh I'd only heard a handful of times. "You're remarkable," he said, sliding the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, of course. He'd probably had my size determined weeks ago. "Fine, prenup, though you're insane to turn down half my empire." "I don't want your empire. I want you." He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and I kissed him back with equal fervor. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had gone dark with desire. "Mine," he said against my lips. "Yours," I agreed, "always yours." 6 months later, I stood in front of a mirror in an elegant bedroom, adjusting the simple white dress I'd chosen for our wedding. It wasn't a traditional ceremony, just immediate family and close friends at a private chapel Dante owned. Elena fussed with my hair while Marco stood guard outside the door, still protective, even though the threat was long gone. Marcus was serving 15 years in federal prison. The FBI had been thrilled with the anonymous tip that led them to him, and even more thrilled when they recovered enough evidence to tie him to multiple fraud schemes. I'd testified at his trial, my voice steady, Dante's presence in the courtroom giving me strength. My business, a consulting firm for nonprofits and small businesses, was thriving. Dante had provided the seed money, but I'd built it myself, brick by brick. I had employees now, clients who respected my work, a reputation being rebuilt on my own terms. And I had Dante, my dark, dangerous, impossibly possessive husband-to-be, who'd taken a broken woman and given her reason to hope again. "Ready?" Elena asked, smiling at me in the mirror. "Ready," I said. The ceremony was brief but beautiful. Dante stood at the altar in a black suit, his eyes never leaving mine as I walked toward him. No fear this time. No doubt. Just certainty that this was where I belonged. When the priest pronounced us husband and wife, Dante kissed me with a tenderness that belied his reputation. His hands cupped my face like I was something precious, something to be treasured. "Mine," he whispered against my lips. "Yours," I whispered back. "Always." The reception was intimate, good food, better wine, and people who genuinely cared about us. I watched Dante laugh at something Marco said, watched him speak quietly with Elena, watched him command a room without even trying. And when he looked at me across the space, his eyes full of possession and promise, and something that looked dangerously like love, I felt my heart overflow. I'd been so afraid that first night, spilling wine on his shoes, stumbling into his orbit. Afraid of his power, his intensity, the danger he represented. I wasn't afraid anymore. Later, as we drove away from the reception toward the private villa where we'd spend our honeymoon, Dante pulled me close. "No regrets?" he asked. "None," I said honestly. "You saved me." "No, bellezza." He pressed a kiss to my temple. "You saved yourself. I just made sure you had the space and protection to do it." The city lights faded behind us as we drove into the night, toward a future I'd once thought impossible. I'd walked through fire and come out stronger. I'd faced my demons and won. I'd found a man who saw my worth when I couldn't see it myself. I'd found home in the most unexpected place, in the arms of a dangerous man with a dark past and a possessive streak a mile wide. But he was my dangerous man, my darkness, my future. And I wouldn't have it any other way. The warm summer breeze carried the scent of jasmine through the open window as Dante's hand found mine, our rings catching the moonlight. Behind us lay a past of pain and betrayal. Ahead stretched a future built on trust and fierce, unshakable love. I'd stopped hiding my tears long ago. Now I let them fall freely, tears of joy, of gratitude, of hope finally reclaimed. And in the darkness beside me, Dante smiled, his grip on my hand tightening just enough to remind me that I was his. He was mine, and nothing would ever come between us again.